All right, so I have recently just uploaded my PowerPoint to Blackboard, so you can download that now or anytime. And I'm going to share screen now so we can start lecture. Before we begin, I thought we should do a couple of things. One is I would like to have a 1 minute moment of silence for the passing of the late king. So I'm timing this now. We don't often have a chance to have a 1 moment of silence. So I'm going to time it 1 minute of silence starting now. Okay, that is 1 minute of silence. So thank you for taking a minute to honor the passing of our late king. And now I'd like to have a follow that immediately by 1 minute of meditation. This is something that I do with my regular class, and I think it's a good practice, good habit. So please find yourself a comfortable location to sit, relax, and do 1 minute of meditation, however you know best how to do that. So I'm starting the timer now. Feel free to close your eyes. Meditation works better that way. Okay, that's 1 minute. Thank you. Another thing I like to do before each class begins is ask the students if they have any thoughts or comments or questions, anything you want to say to me or to the rest of the class. Nothing? All right. Okay, so um, I will start this presentation now. Actually, before I really begin, Can I ask everyone to say hello one at a time? Mention your name and just say hello. I'll start. Jason, hello. Now I want to hear from you. So unmute your microphone and speak up. You don't have to be on video. You can just speak. So I know you're listening and you're here and you're a person and you're present. So any order, any student, one at a time, go ahead and say hello to me, please.
Tanacha, hello.
Hello, thank you.
Jenny, hello.
Hello.
Green, hello.
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 Adia, hello.
Hello.
Oh,
Winnie,
hello.
hello.
Hello. Hello. All right. Well, at least 9 people spoke up, if I counted correctly. That's good. Thank you. All right. The class shows that there are 16 people, but I do suspect that sometimes people will log in and pretend to be in the class, but really have vanished into another room or doing something else. So I'm happy to hear that confirmation that you are really here and present in the class. Now we can begin. We are social creatures, as the last title, the previous screen showed. We are social creatures. That's a theme, a resounding theme in psychology. We are social creatures. So today's topic on social influence and group behavior is to illustrate how much we are influenced by our social nature. Which of the following situations would create the most social conformity to copy the character's behavior? A, at a sports event with thousands of spectators, one stands up and claps. Would you say that there's a lot of social conformity to copy one and to stand up and start clapping also? Is there a lot of social pressure to conform, or a little social pressure to conform? What do you think? For A, letter A. A lot of conformity or a little? While you're thinking about that, let's go on to letter B. Shin sees his 4 friends donate money to a dog charity, and they look at him to see if he will also. Now, is there a lot of pressure on Shin? I'm sorry, a lot of pressure from the friends? Does he have a lot of pressure to donate? Or a little pressure? So is there a strong influence to conform or a weak influence to conform? Letter B. You can think about that. I'll go on to letter C. Pun is in a dark movie theater and notices about 30 people stand to respect, and about 10 people do not stand. Now, is pun having a strong influence to conform or weak influence to conform? And while you're thinking about that, letter D, Pang steps into a private booth and votes for a very unpopular candidate. So this is, if there were a democracy, this is what it would look like. And is there a strong pressure to conform to the average, to the group norm, or a weak pressure to conform? So as you're thinking about all of these examples or situations, you can think about which one is, let's go through these again. Start with letter A. Is it strong or weak influence to conform? And if you don't know what conform means be the same as the group, be the same as everyone in the group or everyone in the population, to be the same or make yourself more like everyone else. So letter A, at a sports event, thousands of spectators, one person stands up and claps. Imagine you are a few rows behind them and you see them stand up. Is there strong pressure for you to also stand up and clap? Or is there weak pressure? I suppose you're probably used to saying your answer in a text box message in the chat box. So I see someone answered weak for letter A. I agree, yes. And now letter B. Shin sees his 4 friends donate money to a dog charity and they all look at him to see if he will do it too. Would you say that that's strong or weak pressure on Shin? A lot of people are answering strong, and that is correct. In fact, that's the strongest of all 4 options. That's the strongest one. Strongest pressure to conform. What about letter C? Pun is in a dark theater. Notice as 30 people stand, 10 people don't stand. How much pressure is there on Pun to conform? Now I see a lot of people answering strong. That's true. There is strong pressure to conform, and that's partly because it is a norm. It's a social norm. So everyone knows to do that in the first place. And second, 30 people are doing it. So those 30 people are going to wonder why you're not doing it too. But it's not the strongest. It's not too much pressure because there's some people that are not standing. And whenever we see some people are disobeying, that takes the pressure off of us to obey or to comply or to conform. So when we see other people disobeying, then there's less pressure to conform. So you guys are right that it is strong pressure, but it is not a lot. Good answer. And now the last one, Pang steps into a private booth to vote. Is there a lot of pressure or a little pressure to conform? Yeah. You are answering correctly in the chat box, everyone. A side note is that the first person to answer in the chat box provides a kind of norm, and other people that copy that answer are either answering by themselves, they are originally answering from their own true belief, or they are conforming. I hope that you are answering from your true belief. I think you are, I'm sure. All right. Here is an outline of the lecture. First, we're going to talk about personal and situational influences, and then social influence, and then behavior in groups. And I should probably first introduce myself. I'm Jason. I taught you last semester on the subject of science, the science of psychology. I said last semester, I meant before the midterm. So, all right. I'm from America. I've been living in Thailand for 8 years, and I really like Thailand. And I've been teaching at Chula for, this is my 5th year here. And 2nd year teaching the EBA program. You guys are in the EBA program. Culture affects our interpretation of others' intent. Do you know if you live in an individualist or collectivist culture? Is Thailand individualist or collectivist? You can answer out loud or you can type in the chat box. Thailand, individualist or collectivist? Yeah, you might not be so familiar with these terms, but collectivist is correct. It would, I mean, it's a spectrum, right? So we have one extreme on one end and one extreme on the other end, and Thailand falls more toward the collectivist end, whereas America falls more toward the individualist end. Behavior is a product of personal factors and situational factors. So personal factors are basically personality and individual needs and individual pressures, whereas situational factors are factors that influence how we behave, where the pressure is coming from the situation, coming from outside. And it's not only from inside, not only from ourselves. Things like self-presentation, social roles, etc., are social in nature, but they are situational because your social role is always in a social situation. So it comes down to a situational factor. If we're talking about social pressure, that is a situational factor. Individualist cultures such as North America, Europe, Australia, South Africa, basically these are Western influence, Western ideas. These exaggerate the influence of personal factors, leading to something called the fundamental attribution error, which is the tendency to overlook situational influences on behavior. That contrasts with collectivist cultures, for example, East Asia, including Thailand, which is Southeast Asia, as well as Latin America, Africa, and South America. These cultures focus on the group more than on the individual. And that gives a more nuanced view of the causes of one's behavior. So now I'd like to have you work in groups of 3. I'm going to change that to groups of 6. Yeah, okay. How do you shop in 7-Eleven? I think I'll just split the class in half because I'm not sure that everyone is actually at their microphone and computer. So I'm just going to split the group in half, and I'll ask you to share how you would shop in 7-Eleven, and please generate 3 personal factors and 3 situational factors that affect how you behave in 7-Eleven, Family Mart, or any kind of convenience store. All right? So I'm going to break you up into breakout rooms to answer this question. And when you come back to the classroom in about 5 minutes, I'm going to ask you to share your group's 3 personal factors and 3 situational factors. I'll try to ask everyone to share 1 factor. So be prepared to share 1 factor, whether it's a personal factor or a situational factor, because I want to hear from everyone in the classroom. All right, so I'll give you 5 minutes to discuss this now. Go to your groups. All right, welcome back from the breakout room. Okay, so I'd like to hear from you. Let's see, how do we do this? Can I ask you to, one by one, any order, first, give me some let's see. What are some personal factors that affect how you behave in 7-Eleven? Let's talk about personal factors first. Now, I was thinking the best, easiest way for me to give you credit for your answer is if you type your full name into the chat box followed by your answer. So that is one way to give you credit. Okay, so you can do that, please. Type your answer in the chat box along with your full name, first and last name, and I will be giving you some credit for that. And if you're not here today, I will be able to post this as an assignment after the class. Yeah, I'll do that. Okay, so I have asked you to work in groups to come up with personal and situational factors that affect your behavior, your behavior, your personal behavior in convenience stores. So type your answer in the chat box. To get credit. But if you're not sure whether your answer is right or wrong, ask me. Try giving me an example. For example, what did you come up with? Give me an example of a personal factor. Yeah, someone answered hunger. That's a good one. That's a personal factor. That's a good one. Any kind of reason. Gender, that's one. If there's a gender influence on your decision to shop in a convenience store, I think that's not a great one because basically men and women both shop equally often. Someone answered, how much in a hurry you are. That is a good example of a situational factor because your personal situation, well, yeah. So that's an example of one that could be personal or situational. But we could think of that as a situational. How much money you have is an example. Yeah. How much money? That is a situational factor, right? Because sometimes you have more, sometimes you have less. So it depends on the situation. It's not personal because personal is about personality. Gender would be more like personal factor because it's something about you. Someone answered promotion. That is a good example of a situational factor, right? But then you could argue that it's a personal factor because you personally are a sucker for promotions, or you personally are not influenced by promotions. So you could think of that as personal or situational. I think that's true for many of these answers. Someone answered what we need at that time. That's a good example of a situational factor or personal. So really, it's kind of quite difficult to firmly decide whether it's a personal or situational because these things it's kind of blurry, the border between personal and situational. Age is one. Age is good because if you're a very young child or you're very elderly, you often don't go to convenience stores. That's a personal factor. Or again, you could call it situational. Depends on the age, depends on the time of your life. Lifestyle, good answer. Price, hunger and thirst, income, family influence on the product that you buy. Yes, very good. Advertisement, discount, knowledge of the product, what you want to eat and use, changing your behavior from frozen food to non-frozen or vice versa. Very good. All right, so some of you wrote your name next to your answer, and some of you I will have to look up by your ID number, which is fine. I can do that. I think I can do that. Yeah, I'm sure I can do that. All right, good. Thank you. So if you put an answer in the chat box, I will get you credit. If you're answering by watching, if you watch this video later on and you want to know how to get the credit, I will upload a small assignment for you to answer to get credit. Okay? All right. Let's go on. All right, social roles. These are behavioral guidelines in a given social setting that rely on scripts, which are knowledge about sequence of events expected. And these social roles which rely on scripts are based on social norms. And social norms are the typical ways that people talk, act, dress, behave in social settings. For example, you might not know how to act on the first day of school, but after going to school on your first day and learning how everyone else acts on the first day of school, you now have learned what the social norms are for the first day of school. You're learning the script and you're learning your social roles. Then when you go to school on the second day of class, you already have the social roles relying on social script based on social norms, which you just learned. So all of these are related. Next bullet point, social identity might be different in different places and social groups. You may be a student in one social group, a son or daughter in another social group, a partner, an employee, a friend, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, etc. As you can see from this list, we have different identities in different social contexts or different places. Because when you're at home, your social context is always family. So then we see that social group and place are often one and the same. Your role is one and the same based on the place or the group or both. Are you the same you across social contexts? Are you the same you when you're at home compared to when you're at work? What do you think? If anyone wants to answer out loud, please answer out loud. Are you the same you across social contexts? Anyone? One person answer that question, please. Are you the same you at home and at work? Answer out loud. So turn on your microphone and give your answer.
It depends on who you are.
Good answer. It depends on who you are, because some people will act the same way regardless of where they are. But some people will adjust their behavior depending on who they are with, where they are, what is expected of them. All right. I would like you to discuss this question in groups. I'll try breaking you up into smaller groups this time. So I'm going to put you into 4 groups. All right, so answer that question. Discuss in groups. Are you the same person regardless of circumstance? Or are you different people in different circumstances? Or what I mean is, do you act different? Do you think differently? Do you operate the same or differently depending on who you're with? All right, so discuss that, please. And I'm sending you to your groups now. Take about 5 minutes to discuss. Okay, I am curious to know what type of answers you came up with while you were discussing in groups. Are you the same you across different contexts? Would anyone like to answer out loud about that question? What did you think? Or what do you think? If not, then I will go on. The power of the situation, its effect on social roles. We're going to watch this video, the Stanford Prison Experiment. This experiment demonstrated social roles, social norms, scripts, as well as in-group and out-group competition and the power of the situation. Even the researcher Zimbardo fell into its power, the power of the situation. All right, I will put that video on now. So those who, let's see, group one, can you present one person? I know it's kind of like you're shy or embarrassed or something, but it's okay. If not group one, how about group two? Present what you came up with, please. And if not group two, then how about group three? What did you come up with? Sounds like there's too much shyness. People are too shy to share with their out loud. Well, that's too bad. I hope that you had a fruitful conversation in your groups, though. I hope that you discussed some strategy to persuade, whether that's using the peripheral or central route. I thought that was a good exercise, but it can only be a good exercise if everyone participates. Last chance. Does anyone want to present what you came up with, your advertisement thing? Anyone? Okay, then we'll go on. Quick little recap on what we've gone over so far. After this video, we started looking at cognitive factors, including cognitive dissonance, and then we looked at persuasion, how we can persuade an audience about something using the central or peripheral route. Next, we move on to another kind of social pressure. This is called social conformity. So it's in keeping with the theme of the power of the situation or situational influence as apart from personal influence, or factors that affect what we
Conformity is going along with the group, modeling the responses after what the group is doing exactly what the crowd, what everybody else is performing.
Hold on. I'm sorry, one moment. Groups of participants, including one naive participant and several confederates who mislead the participant by their opinions. That's the basis of this experiment. They found that 76% of participants chose the wrong choice at least once, but privately they did not accept that as the wrong answer, as correct. So they privately disbelieved what the group was saying, but publicly they answered as if they were in agreement with the group, displaying social conformity. Social conformity is strongest when there's a large majority, there are no other dissenters, and when the public or private nature of the response, when the nature of the response is public. What am I saying? When there's a large majority, when there's no dissent, and when it's public. Because in private, people answer honestly, but in public, they conform to public pressures or public norms. All right, so there you have it. Those are the factors that influence social conformity. Those are some factors that were involved in that experiment. Two types of social influence are normative social influence and informational social influence. Normative social influence is when people conform to the group norm to fit that norm, to feel good, and to be accepted by the group. And informational social influence is when people conform because they believe that the group is competent and has the correct information, particularly when the task or situation is ambiguous. We see a lot of informational social influence all over the place, all the time. Whenever we trust the group, we usually do so based on informational social influence. We assume that the group is competent and has more information than we do personally. And so we conform based on that assumption. But normative social influence has nothing to do with believing that the group is normal, or that the group is intelligent or has the right answers or the right information. Normative social influence is more just about fitting in, just to feel good, just to be accepted by the group. So which type of influence would you say is illustrated in the smoke-filled room study? I'm going to show you that video now. Now, the question I have for you is, do you think that that was a good example of normative social influence or informational social influence? You can answer out loud. Just turn on your mic and speak up. Normative or informational?
Informational.
I think that's a good answer. She was new to the group and new to the setting. She did not know how much information other people had. I mean, one kind of assumption that she could have made, she could have assumed that everyone knows exactly how much she knows. And if she knows nothing, she could assume that everyone else knows nothing also. But our human nature is to assume that other people know more than we do. I don't know if that's human nature or just a habit. I don't know. But I think I agree with you. Informational social influence. However, it could be argued that this is simply normative social influence as well, because she should have assumed that no one else has any more information than she does. All right, so yeah, let's go to the next slide now. This is Milgram's experiment. This is a famous study in psychology. The reason it is famous is because it is so unethical by our modern views on ethics. This graph illustrates what percentage of participants would proceed in the experiment and how long they would proceed to stay in the experiment before they refused to continue onward. So most people would go ahead and shock their co-participant up to 135 volts. Apparently, it was all actually a fake. It was an act. The learner was a stooge, which means they were an actor only. They were part of the study. They were being paid to act as if they were just a participant. But the learner was not really being shocked. Well, the other participant who was asked to inflict the punishment on the learner, that was a real participant, and they would shock the participants. Most of them would shock 100 up to 255 volts. About 80% of them would go that far, and about 65% would go all the way up to 375 volts. And then it sort of leveled off there. People would continue inflicting punishments all the way up to potentially lethal threshold. They weren't told that it was lethal. They were just told, well, these were the labels that they saw: slight to moderate, strong to very strong, intense to extremely intense, severe, and XXX. So this study illustrates that people will obey an authority when the setting is right. However, replications have not been able to get quite as much compliance to authority when they change the situation. So if we have this study take place in an office building instead of a laboratory, the percentage of participants who delivered the highest shock dropped from 65% down to 48%. And we see from other manipulations that compliance drops even down from 48 down to 40, 30, even 23, depending on which factors we change in the study. When the learner was in the same room as the teacher, only 40%. When the teacher and the learner hold hands or touch hands, you might wonder, why are they touching hands? Won't the electricity go through the hand? But I don't know how they did it, but 30%. And then when the researcher gave the order by phone, it dropped down to 23%. The summary is that obedience to authority decreased when the authority was decreased. Authority of the experimenter was decreased either by not being in a laboratory or not being in the room, giving the order over the phone. These things decreased the authority or the authoritative pressure of that authority figure. And also there was decreased compliance or obedience when the perception of the victim was increased, when they seemed more like a human being by virtue of being in the same room, touching them, or other factors like that. Now, this is an example of a study that is not ethical and cannot be done today. The reason that it is not ethical enough to be done today is because of the psychological discomfort in the form of guilt and in the form of personal shame after the experiment is over. So the feeling of psychological torture at doing that, inflicting severe pain on another, that is already unethical. And then secondly, that guilt or shame continues to persist beyond the ending of the experiment. It can extend for days, weeks, maybe months. So that is an example of a study that is not to be performed by psychologists anymore. And yet they did replicate this study in kind of kinder, easier, less intense versions, but now it's much less replicated and much less intensely replicated. The intensity of the pressure on the participant is now much less because we feel sorry for people and our ethics have grown to prevent this kind of study from taking place now, which is a good thing. We definitely needed our ethics to grow on that point. All right, the next topic is groupthink. Groupthink is when we are influenced by the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors around us. Actually, that's all the time. But groupthink is the modification of your opinion to align with the group. So, what is the group's opinion? That's something that you gather through listening and watching. You kind of learn what is the group's opinion, and then you are susceptible to groupthink when the group modifies your opinion to line up with the group's opinion. Groupthink might occur when group harmony becomes more important than making good decisions, or it can happen when an authoritative leader discourages members from disagreeing, or when the group is isolated from hearing alternative views. All of these contribute to groupthink. Now, the symptoms of groupthink are perceiving the group can do no wrong, perceiving the group as morally correct, self-censorship, which is when you withhold information to avoid disturbing the group, consensus, that's kind of obvious, discouraging dissenting views to avoid and not sharing them with the group leader in order to avoid this lack of consensus, the disruption of consensus, or the disruption of the group's feelings. Incorrectly perceiving unanimity, that means everyone being the same among the group members. Unanimity of consensus of opinion. So when you think everyone's opinion's the same, even if they're not, that's another feature. And having negative attitudes towards others with differing viewpoints. All of these are symptoms of groupthink, and they suggest that groupthink might be going on. Again, we are influenced by the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors of those around us. And when we are put in a group context, in a group setting, where we are supposed to come up with, well, just the natural force of being in a group motivates us to share the opinions of the group. Now, when we are in a group and we have groupthink going on, we are susceptible to group polarization. This is a phenomenon that occurs in group settings. It is the strengthening of an original group attitude after discussion. So I have already put you in groups many times in this class. You've been put in groups in other classes. When you're put into a group, also even just your whole class as a single class, section 1, you are susceptible to group thinking and group polarization because this happens all the time anywhere there's a group. It's just human nature. It's automatic. Group polarization, which is the strengthening of the original group attitude after discussion, this happens when groups discuss something together. They get polarized. They might have had different opinions at the beginning, but those who are in favor of one side will become more in favor. Those who are against, they might stay the same. But becoming more in favor of the group's opinion is called group polarization. So a group that initially favors viewpoint A is likely to increase their support of viewpoint A after reaching consensus through discussion. And that's kind of obvious, because if we discuss as a group and we agree as a group, that will surely affect our opinions. I think it should affect our opinions. But the question is, how long does it affect our opinions? Is that temporary shifted of opinion, or is it permanent? It's probably temporary. It's a product of the group discussion. It's not necessarily changing your permanent opinion. Have you ever experienced group polarization? And how do you know if you have? Does anyone want to answer that question out loud? If not, we'll just go on. Social facilitation and loafing. This is about the last point of the lecture, I think. Social facilitation occurs when an individual performs better when an audience is watching than when the individual performs the behavior alone. Now that social facilitation is illustrated here in this picture on the left. You can see that 4 people are on exercise machines. Those are called rowing machines. Now, the rowing exercise on these machines is very energy draining. It's hard to keep it up for a whole minute. But if you work with all these people standing around watching you do it, and you're part of a team that's working together, maybe you're all trying to make it to 4 minutes, or maybe it's a competition to see who can last the longest. In these kinds of situations where everyone is watching you perform, there's something called social facilitation, which means that you do better than you would have because you're being watched. So others' attention is on you, and you want to appear good to others. You want to appear bigger, better, stronger, more energetic, more athletic, more intelligent, whatever it is. Your desire to appear positive in front of other people is called social facilitation. Now, you might also be familiar with social loafing, which is exerting less effort when working together with a group. This occurs when individuals' performance cannot be evaluated separately from the group. That's when members let other members pick up the slack. An example of this is when people cleaning up litter from the roadside, some will exert effort, others will not exert effort, and yet the entire job of picking up litter for 1 hour or 2 hours, the whole job gets done without identifying who worked and who didn't, who worked hard and who didn't work hard or worked barely at all. And that is illustrated here in this bottom picture on the right in the game of tug of war, where you know that your group has to work together to win. So 1 person or 2 or 3 are working hard. 2 people are working hard. But everyone else, knowing that their effort will not be praised or blamed if the group wins or loses, they're just not bothering to try. And you may have done some group projects in your university career so far, or maybe to come, where you're in a group and the group has to do the project, and you're all getting graded on your group's performance, but you're not getting graded individually. That means that some people who think that they cannot contribute much or don't want to contribute much, maybe it's because their schedule is busy or they don't believe that they have a smart enough brain to contribute. Whatever the reason is that they choose not to contribute, they're not punished and they're not rewarded. And that is the case in a group setting where we find social loafing. And it's very difficult to encourage people in a group to work together and contribute effort, every single one of them, if they know that their individual effort will not be praised or punished. So it's hard to force people to work for the good, for the benefit of the group, and not only for their own individual concerns. All right, so that's social facilitation and social loafing. Now we have a list of all these types of social influence and their description, which is a kind of like short, concise recap of the whole lecture. And that is the end of the lecture. So for those of you who stuck it through to the end of the class, thank you very much for attending, especially on a holiday. And for those of you who are watching from another time point in the future, don't forget to complete the activity on Blackboard to get points for participating in this class. Those of you who answered a question in the chat box today, at the beginning of class today, I will be giving you credit for that in that way. One last thing. You are responsible for taking a quiz. And that quiz has to be taken on your own within a time limit of 5 minutes. It's not 5 minutes from now, it's 5 minutes from the time that you open the quiz. So once you start it, you have 5 minutes to complete it. You're to work alone, and then it will be automatically graded, and you will get credit for the class from that quiz. And also credit for the class from your answer in the chat box or your completion of the activity on Blackboard. All right, so that is the end of the class. Thank you for attending, everyone. And the quiz is going to be available. I'm reading the chat box. When is the quiz again? It is available starting immediately after I end class today. In fact, in fact, I can make it available starting right now. Okay, so now the quiz is available on Blackboard. Please complete that quiz within 1 week. So before Monday next week. I'm sorry, before Tuesday next week. All right, thanks everyone, and this is the end. Goodbye. Make sure you do the quiz and the assignment. Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.